All right. So welcome back, everybody, to another weekly Course in Miracles teaching session. It's been um, quite a while, I guess, since we've last been together, and um, I'm excited to delve a little bit more into the course and our next section of the Song of Prayer, which is on healing. And so we're going to delve into some topics. The focus today is the purpose of sickness, and uh, a, a major point, I guess, in learning what healing is that you can't learn uh, or you can't awaken to your ability to heal without awakening to your ability to create pain, misery, sickness, destruction, and even genocide that we see within the world, right? So the same mind that can heal is the same mind that is creating exactly what you're experiencing right now. When we went over the sections on prayer, right, we learned that prayer is not simply praying for good things to happen or for needs to be met or problems. It's something that we're always doing. And the Course even teaches that all of our prayers are always answered. So what we want is always happening. But what we're convinced of is that we're split, that there's poor little me, poor little Patrick, who's living off in his little corner of Northern Ontario, right? And he's praying or watching the news and wanting there to be peace in the Middle East or whatever, is because his ego's getting caught up in that whole thing, pretending like it has nothing to do with me, like I'm not the one causing it, feeding it, wanting it, right? Wanting the atrocities to be happening. That's just one example, but we're going to be talking more about sickness today, but they're all examples of sickness. Sickness in me is the same as experiencing sickness in somebody else. If we're seeing it in the world, it's happening within ourselves. So in order to tune into our ability to heal, in order to tune into our ability to raise the ladder to find the peace within ourselves and within the world, which are both one, we have to tune into our ability to create sickness and misery and how much we love it, right? And why do we love it, right? What is it? What does it do for us? What are the payoffs? What are the kickbacks? What do we love about seeing ourselves as sick? Why do we, and how much do we love seeing other people sick, right? And that seems morbid. It seems crazy. Until you delve a little bit closer into the mind. Because as you delve deeper and peel back the layers of the onion, there is within us a deep, horrifying pain, a deep guilt, a feeling of wretchedness, an intense, like unbearable lack that we feel within ourselves. And that comes from the belief that we're separate, that we're an ego, that we're not one with God, the universe, everything, oneness, right? And so that pain is so deep that we push it deep down and we cover it up with defenses and lack and other things like that. And so if you spend a lot of time in meditation, right, if you spend a lot of time processing your pain, moving deeper and deeper into those layers of the mind, and you realize the intensity of that pain that we feel within ourselves when we believe that we're this ego character. So when you're aware of that and you felt that, if you've started to get an inklings of that, you'll then realize that these lesser things, these things that seem like these horrible, awful things that seem to be happening within the world or to ourselves, are, by comparison, they feel good, they feel great, they feel awesome, right? Compared to this horrible, awful lack that resulted in the destruction of heaven, the destruction of oneness, and the belief that we murdered God and destroyed everything, and so that God is now coming to get us, right? And we just have this sense of doom that something's coming to destroy us because we did something awful by wresting our consciousness out of the oneness to usurp the place of God, right? All of that is illusion. None of it is true, but we believe it is. And so that is a big part of this exploration, is that we can't get in a sustained way to the experience of oneness until we go and acknowledge all the layers of belief that we have. You can cut through it, and because truth doesn't require all these steps of healing. So there are ways to cut through it and get directly to that experience. But in order to stay in a sustained way, to really move our consciousness permanently into the awareness of God, the awareness of unconditional love and peace, we first have to undo these deep-seated beliefs within the mind. So we're going to delve a little bit into that. So I'm just going to pull up the PowerPoint here. All right, so I don't have too much here, but it's just going to guide us through some exercises to get to some understanding on sickness and healing. Okay, so first of all, like I said, what is sickness? Because this is probably one of the biggest impediments, or the first thing that really needs to be healed in order for us to come to a place where we can find healing. Because our definition of sickness is, if we don't know what it is, if we can't experience it for what it really is, then we're going to be putting our efforts into the wrong place. If you remember earlier in the section of the Song of Prayer, they said healing or getting what we want or fixing problems within the world is an echo, and so the course asks us to seek for the song, right? So we need to be putting our effort into the song, which is the experience of God, the experience of oneness and peace within ourselves, and then healing results, peace within the world or externally comes as a reflection of that. But if you put your focus on trying to find an echo, you can't do that without the song. So if you're going to try to find healing of a body, then you're never going to find it. And so our whole world, like my whole career previous to this, was in how do we heal the body, right? How do we heal cancer? How do we heal heart disease? How do we get people to live longer, right? That is the goal of medicine and a lot of alternative health and other things like that too. But that is the course in this case calls that magic, because it's putting the effort onto the body. You're making the body real. They're saying the body is the problem. Your body's sick, it's broken, we need to fix it. Or, oh my God, you're dying, we need to make you live longer, right? So doesn't mean that it won't work, but it won't work because your definition of sickness is wrong. And so what I want to invite you guys into is to explore with me a little bit to the experience of sickness. So what I'd like you to do is, all of us often have some form of ailment, but you can think of yourself the last time that you were sick, or you can bring to mind somebody else that might be sick or a problem within the world. So sickness, I want you to broaden if you have a physical illness, then you can focus on that. But if you're going bankrupt, if you're worried about the economy, you're seeing your country slip into tyranny, or whatever whatever your problem seems to be, the one that's pervading your consciousness, because they're all really the same. They're all shadows, but sickness is one that tends to really root us within the body. What I'd like you to do is just close your eyes a little bit and take a couple deep breaths. And as you do, tune into your body. So just notice your face, if there's any tension there. Notice your neck, if your shoulders are tight, if there's any lump in your throat. But I want you to pay special attention to your torso, just noticing if your heart is open or if it feels closed, if everything feels numb. And then tune into your lower torso, just like your solar plexus area. Just noticing if there's tension, if it feels numb, or if it feels relaxed. Not trying to change anything at all, just noticing what's there. Now I want you to call to mind the experience of sickness. So the last time that you were sick, or it could be an all-pervading problem. Because when we're sick, it just consumes our consciousness, right? You can't breathe. Your stomach, the nausea just kind of consumes your whole mind. But just call to mind a recent illness or any kind of problem. And what we're going to do is we want to look at how does this sickness make you feel. It can also be a sickness of a loved one. So I want you to bring to mind that sickness, the physical symptoms that are coming. And I want you to leave those behind a little bit. But if you go to the experience of it, how do you feel? What emotions come up when you're sick? And for me, when I'm sick, there's a feeling of weakness. There's a feeling that I'm helpless and vulnerable. So that is a very common experience that we think, again, because time is not real, cause and effect are not what we think they are. So how a sickness makes us feel, we think is a result. Oh my God, I can't breathe. I can't, I'm sneezing or whatever. Therefore, I feel grumpy or I feel weak. But we're opening our mind a little bit that maybe these things that I'm feeling are what my goal was with this sickness. Why am I feeling this sickness? Maybe it's because of these feelings that I wanted to come up. So there's the feeling of weakness. There's the feeling of vulnerability. And as I sit with that, there's this feeling of separation. A big thing for me right now is finances, right? So I have my financial problems, and that's my sickness for sure that is pervading me now. And there's this sense of aloneness that comes with that. There's a sense that I'm experiencing this. Other people are healthy, but I'm not. Other people can pay their bills, but I can't. Or whatever it is. It's all illusion. But my point is there's a feeling of separation. That this is my problem. It's not a problem shared by the world. This is my thing and it's my problem. And there's almost a sense that I'm alone in it. Even if your family might be in it with you, the world is not. So there's this sense of being alone. And if you've experienced yourself or somebody else who's been very ill, so seriously ill, like close to dying, had to go to the hospital, that brings up a whole other layer to the experience of sickness. So this separation that you feel of being alone in illness or alone in your problems is part of the result. That is actually part of the purpose of sickness. So that feeling. So I want you to just to feel that aloneness within the body, within your experience, within your consciousness. Um, but also when somebody's about to die, that becomes a fear, right? A fear of death, that you are going to die, you're going to be separated from your loved ones forever. Or that person that you care about is going to be separated from you. So the fear of death can become very, um, the more serious the illness, the more that comes up and the more prominent that is in the experience. Um, then, and it might seem uh, extraneous, but really it isn't. So what I want you to do is, as you're sitting in that problem, as you're feeling that aloneness, as you're feeling that all pervasiveness and the fear coming up, but where is this illness going? Where is this problem going? How am I going to deal with this? What you want to start to look at is what other layers or kind of going outward, how are you relating to others within this? And so if you're thinking of going to the hospital, um, for myself, you all know my background, right? So when you're experiencing illness, there's this deep distrust that comes up within my mind when I think of going to a hospital, right? I don't trust the medical system anymore. They're full of people who will just do what they're told. I can't really trust anything they're going to say. I think, or for some people, it might be, are they going to jab me when they put me to sleep or whatever? Um, and again, those feel like just kind of extraneous thoughts that come off of that. But what we're starting to see as we look to these other layers, if I look to my financial problems, right? We have the cold, heartless bank that's going to come take my house away, right? We have the government who's trying to tax me to death so I can't even put food on my table or whatever, right? So there's this sense that there's somebody who's out to get us. And so there's this sense of guilt. There's a sense that this is something that either I deserved or somebody is unjustly thrusting upon me. But always within the experience of illness or problems or ego, really, because the ego's all of lives, thrives off problems. Within that, there is always a sense that it is either deserved because you feel like you're guilty, you deserve this, I brought this on through my sinfulness or through my smoking or through whatever that might be. But if you go into that feeling, if you sit with it for long enough, there's going to be one, blame, and two, guilt. And the Course says that there's no form of suffering, right, that fails to hide an unforgiving thought. You cannot experience suffering in any form without believing in guilt, because that's the way the mind works. Within this dream, it goes sin, guilt, fear. Sin, guilt, punishment, right? And fear is just a form of, it's a fear of punishment. It's a punishment in itself. And so if you sit with that for long enough, there is some form of unforgiveness that always comes up. So it might be distrust of the medical system. It might be feeling like you had bad habits and maybe you drank too much and now you have cirrhosis, right? Or that the government, somebody else did this to me. Look what they did to me, right? So just below that layer of suffering, that weakness, we can sense that there's this guilt. There's this guilt and blame, because they're both the same. They're two sides of the same coin. Guilt is just directed towards what you think is yourself, and blame is towards somebody else, but they're both forms of guilt. And so as you get to that other layer, you start to get closer and closer to these deeper layers of the mind. And as you sit in it, and you might not be able to experience this now, honestly, sometimes you have to sit with your sickness for months and years to kind of really get to this. But what I want you to notice is as you sit with that for longer and longer, can you start to sense this feeling? So normally when you have a problem, when you feel like my bankruptcy or whatever, or for you, it might be your sickness, it feels like it's outside. It's something going on within the body. And you can kind of just, in your mind, you can kind of feel it as something external that has to be fixed with something that needs to be done. as we're moving into these deeper layers of how does this illness make you feel, can you get a sense just a little bit that it's moving inward, that you're starting to realize that the suffering, what's really what's making you miserable and pain, like and driving you mad within the sickness, maybe it's not actually what's going on externally. Maybe it's these deep layers of guilt, of blame, of fear, of separation. These are horrifying, horrible experiences within the mind. And really, they are they are the source of our suffering. And so I know we've kind of gone on and on about this through this experiment. And this is something that we can kind of delve into a little bit too, if anybody wants to do sessions, but or on your own. But what you can sense is that sickness is not something within the body. Sickness is an internal experience of the mind. It is a tormented mind that is in this experience of separation, of being separate from oneness and from God. And from that, it's produced an external image to distract you from the deeper layers of pain. And so there's a part of your mind that loves sickness, right? Because then we can blame somebody else. Like, I got the vaccine, that those Pfizer fuckers, have destroyed my immune system or whatever. That is a less painful experience actually than these deep layers of separation, of lack and guilt that reside within a mind that believes that it's separate. So all of this is just to say that sickness is never of the body. Sickness is of the mind. And when you can learn that lesson, and when you can know that and experience that and bring you that into your mind of realizing this sickness, this problem, this bankruptcy, this war, this genocide that's happening, the problem is not what I see happening with my eyes. The problem is this inner experience that I'm having about it. And when you can move that problem into your own consciousness, you have taken a huge step forward to learning how to heal. Because it's only from within the mind and realizing that this problem is within the mind that it can be healed. All right. Okay, so this is just another quick review. I've kind of touched on some of this already. This was from our previous session, kind of. This is a diagram of the dreaming mind, right? That I'm not Patrick. I'm the one dreaming up this whole world, this dream that Patrick seems to be living. And so when we're going to look at sickness, when I experience myself as sick or problems or poor or whatever it seems to be, I'm convinced that I'm this poor guy down here with poor little me with my little problems, right? And so this little guy tries to go see a doctor and tries to take medications and do all that stuff, and to try to fix the problem within the world, right? But doesn't go to the deeper layers of the mind to undo the whole thing. So really what's happening is the sickness is happening in the mind of the dreamer up here. This little dog is asleep up here. And so anything you try to do to fix within here, if the dreaming mind still believes that it's separate, sickness is just going to keep showing up in any other form. But again, what I'm showing here is that there's always a sense of causation, right? That who made me sick, right? Well, that was my neighbor who was sick and then came around me and brought her kids over and they got me sick. There's the boss who's overworking you, stressing you out, making you sick. And then there's the self-blame, which is down here, which is thinking that, oh, it's my bad habits. I shouldn't have been doing that. I deserve this sickness. But what I want to pay special attention here is that we think that these are all extraneous to the experience, but it's this sense of guilt, this sense of blame, that is at the root of the sickness itself. So how do we heal the mind that believes that it's sick? And that is through forgiveness. forgiveness is the solution to sickness. And it seems bizarre from the world's point of view, right? But forgiveness is the undoing of guilt. It is of seeing that there is only innocence, that all seeming sin and problems and atrocities and all of that that's happened within the world are not really true. And so when we can see uh, that not only the people around us are innocent, that allows it to see, us to see it within ourselves. But what I'm gonna one other thing I guess with this is the experience of the ego God, and this is where I've had recently had a pretty big breakthrough because knowing my history, I grew up Catholic, and then I kind of became an atheist, agnostic, and then moved into this kind of experience of God, no longer a belief. But what I've realized is that when we're in this experience of having problems, and it's an unconscious thing, but the ego God is a pervasive idea within the mind. And sorry, I'm gonna go back here. Oh, oh. So when you're in the experience of having a problem, when you're in the experience of being sick, I didn't think of this because it was kind of hidden within the mind. But when you're thinking of God, when you're in that state, it brings some real contradictions within the mind, right? Because our unconscious idea is that God created this world, right? That's what almost all religions teach. That's what most people think, or even if you don't think it's a God, like a man in the sky, there's a sense that there's a universe happening, right? Or at least there's some layer of order to reality. So sometimes this ego God can be projected onto government, right? Sometimes government is beneficial or government is out to get us. All of that, those are manifestations of the ego God. But as you sit with yourself as sick, and even if you think of praying to God for healing or the healing of yourself or somebody else, as you sit with that, this God that you're praying to heal you, if you're really omnipotent, if you're really all loving, how am I not healed already? Or how are they not healed already? Right? How insane is it that we pray to a God to end the genocide in the Middle East, right? Like as if we need to pray to them to do that. So as you sit with that, what is your experience of God when you're in sickness, right? It is of this heartless, cold, heartless, even if you can delude yourself and be like, oh no, God loves us, he just wants us to pray for healing or whatever, right? It's like, no, like it's like there is some cold, heartless bastard who's up there who is like loves somehow wants suffering. And how insane is it that we have to pray that people get better, uh that my niece doesn't die, like how insane is that, right? It is um you realize that this evil God that we pray to, when we're praying in that way, um is this psychopath, right, who is in control of the world. And so eh, the big revelation that came to me, because I've been practicing forgiveness and learning how to do it to people in the world and people around me and stuff like that, I realized, holy shit, I need to forgive the ego God, right? Because there is no ego God, but the ego God is really me. But I needed to realize that I experience the world as created by a cold, heartless monster in the sky who's whimsical, and sometimes he's gives you good things, and if you're good enough, and sometimes doesn't, right? And you need to pray to them so that you'll hopefully get some crumbs from the table, you know, like so. I realize I've been abused and tormented by this God that seems to be creating my life that I'm living in, and it was like, whoa, I didn't even realize that I needed to forgive this ego God. But when I brought that forgiveness of seeing the light within the ego God, and that's what we're moving to next in our next slide, this profound experience of healing, immediate healing, kind of really came through. And not that I've done it entirely, it's a new practice that I'm trying to bring out more. But this experience of the ego God, of being abused, right? Really, if you're living in this world, we're being abused, right? If you think you're here, because the real God has nothing to do with this world, right? But anyway, so that comes to the question of what really is healing. And so healing is immediate. It's not something that takes time, because if the experience of sickness isn't really what we see within the world, right? So it's not the sick body with tumors all over it, or the dead body of a child. That isn't the real sickness. The real sickness is the mind that thinks that those are real, that has experienced this guilt and suffering and lack and awfulness, right? So then what really is healing? Is healing isn't of curing the body. It isn't of ending the genocide. It isn't of um, raising the dead. It is, but that's the echo, right? So what we really want, what is the experience of healing? And that is of remembering who we really are. So when we choose the Holy Spirit, when we choose to undo the beliefs of our own guilt, of the guilt of others, of the guilt of the ego God, um, who's creating this world, really, that's us. But as we forgive us in the form of the ego God, um, all of a sudden we can see the light, right? And we experience immediately our sickness can be healed, because the sickness is within the mind. It's not within the world. We don't need to wait time after our mind is healed. We experience the peace, the oneness, the unconditional love immediately when we forgive, when we realize that what we've made up was just illusion, and that the truth of us is that we are as God created us, perfect, holy, innocent, and unconditionally loving. And so is the ego God, right? Because they're not real. It's all, none of this is real. So the solution is always forgiveness. Forgiveness, remembering who we are, and finding the holy instant of oneness. Immediately, your sickness is healed, and the sickness of others is, because you go into the mindset of having no needs, of remembering who you are, who doesn't need money and doesn't need a healthy body. The goal is never that. It's to come to the experience of bliss, peace, oneness, and connection. So when you realize that and you put that as your target, what will happen is, when you've let go of all the guilt, then the dream as the reflection will then be healed as a result. But only as a reflection. You won't care for that. You're not aiming for that. You're aiming for remembering who you are. And then those things might just show up as reflections of that. All right. That's kind of all I had here. Okay, so we're just going to go through reading some of the text, and then we'll move into the lesson. Okay, so pretty short section. All right, so we'll read through some of this just with some of that as background, to see if they can learn some lessons. So section 3, which is healing. This is the introduction. So prayer has both aids and witnesses, which make the steep ascent more gentle and more sure, easing the pain of fear and offering the comfort and the promises of hope. Forgiveness is witnesses and forgiveness is witness and an aid to prayer, a giver of assurance of success in ultimate attainment of the goal, is healing. Its importance should not be too strongly emphasized, for healing is a sign or symbol of forgiveness's strength, and only an effect or shadow of a change of mind about the goal of prayer. So healing is a reflection of what forgiveness offers us. So as much as if we're seeing suffering within the world, if we're seeing problems, if we're seeing genocide, then clearly there's something within our mind that needs to be healed, especially if it bothers us, right? And how can it not bother you unless you try to shut it out of your mind? But even then, it's bothering you if you feel the need to not look at it, right? So if there's something happening within the world, it's a sign that something needs to be healed, but it's not that thing. That's not the problem. The problem is always within the mind. And then healing comes as a witness. It's like it's proof. You're calling on the messengers of love, right? Rather than the messengers of fear, to reinforce that Holy Spirit, show me that my mind has been healed. And then when you see healings happening, when you see the messengers of love, like it's whoa, like my mind is being healed. The world is changing. Not because that's what matters the most, but it's what matters is our mind is healing, and we're remembering who we are. Okay, so the cause of sickness. Do not mistake effect for cause, nor think that sickness is apart and separate from what its cause must be, right? So the cause of sickness is always guilt or blame, and the cause of healing is always forgiveness. It is a sign, a shadow of an evil thought that seems to have reality and to be just according to the usage of the world. It is external proof of inner sins and witnesses to unforgiving thoughts that injure and would hurt the Son of God, which is any other person in the world. Healing the body is impossible, and this is shown by the brief nature of the cure. The body yet must die, and so its healing but delays its turning back to dust, where it was born and will return. So here, saying that healing, it's kind of an after effect. It's not that important, because if you think about it, and this is what it's inviting us, that Jesus in the Course is inviting us to consider, is that think about it, even if you healed, even if you brought back the dead, they're going to die, 20 years later or whatever, right? So even if you healed your cancer, are you really healed, right? Because you're like, are you really going to live for 1,000 more years? And even then you're going to die. So what the Course is inviting us into is the thought that healing we tend to think of as of undoing of cancer, of undoing of my bankruptcy and bringing money back into my life or whatever, right? And it's like, no, because as long as you believe that you're the body, you're still screwed, right? You're still caught in the illusion, right? So a healed body, a holy ego, for to become a sinless, beautiful, healed person is not the goal here. It's not. Actually, the more darkness that you can allow to come up, the better, because you realize that you're not the body, you're the dreamer. And so the goal here, healing is a witness, kind of a guide, a gentle moving up the ladder to remembering who we really are. But who we really are is not a healed body. It's not a holy ego who's virtuous and kind and always loving. It's like, no, that's not it. We are spirit, right? And so that's what the Course is inviting us to. So the body's cause, not just sickness's cause. So the body's cause is unforgiveness of the Son of God. It has not left its source, and in its pain and aging and the mark of death upon it, this is clearly shown, right? So by definition, the body is born and dies, right? So it's a problem in itself, not just sickness. Fearful and frail it seems to be to those who think their life is tied to its command and linked to its unstable tiny breath. Death stares at them as every moment goes irrevocably past their grasping hands, which cannot hold them back. And they feel fear as bodies change and sicken, for they sense the heavy scent of death upon their hearts, right? Death is inevitable. The body can be healed as an effect of true forgiveness. Only that can give remembrance of immortality, which is the gift of holiness and love. Forgiveness must be given by a mind which understands that it must overlook all shadows on the holy face of Christ, among which sickness should be seen as one. Nothing but that, the sign of judgment made by brother upon brother, and the Son of God upon himself. For he has damned his body as his prison, and forgot that it is he who gave this role to it. What he has done now must God's Son undo, but not alone, for he has thrown away the prison's key, his holy sinlessness and the remembrance of his Father's love. Yet help is given him in the voice his Father placed in him. The power to heal is now his Father's gift, for through his voice, the Holy Spirit, the inner teacher, he can still reach his Son, reminding him the body may become his chosen home, but it will never be his home in truth. Distinctions, therefore, must be made between true healing and its faulty counterpart. The world of opposites is healing's place, for what in heaven could there be to heal? As prayer within the world can ask amiss, and seeming charity forgive to kill, so healing can be false as well as true, a witness to the power of the world or to the everlasting love of God. So, yeah, there's a lot in there, but our lesson's actually super long, so I'm not going to spend too much time in. It's going to go into false healing versus true healing. One of them makes the body real, the other one doesn't. One of them undoes the cause of illness, and the other one just its effects. So band-aids versus cures. So I think our lesson is going to delve a lot more deeply into sickness than this is. So I'm going to kind of move on here. All right. So this is a really long lesson. I think it's very powerful. I'm not going to be doing a Beyond the Matrix here because I kind of want to delve a little bit more deeply into this text. This is what, 20 paragraphs, but it's very powerful and delves deeply into the nature of sickness. And so I kind of want to read through this, and then we're going to kind of do a shorter meditation, but we're going to just kind of practice the lesson, right? But hopefully in a little bit more of a guided way, kind of like we did earlier where we explored sickness, we're going to explore moving out of it. All right. So sickness is a defense against the truth. No one can heal unless he understands what purpose sickness seems to serve. For then he understands as well its purpose has no meaning, right? So when we realize why we create sickness, why we create it out of blame so that we can be a victim, we can be poor little me, we don't need to feel the deep guilt of feeling like we destroyed heaven or murdered God or whatever insane beliefs that we have. But because they're hidden, they still stay there. We still believe them. So when we delve into our love of sickness, how much pleasure we get from it because it helps us avoid our own guilt, when we can look at it, right, and see how insane it is, the idea that we can change ourselves, that we can not be as God created us, that we cannot be of the same nature and power as God is. When we realize that, when we look at it, we realize none of this makes any sense. And that's when you realize that sickness is an insane belief that we can change ourselves, that we can be weak and tie ourselves to a body and punish ourselves for our perceived sins. Sin is impossible. Once you get that, it's like boom, it's like glitch in the matrix, then the sickness goes away. But as long as these hidden beliefs, these hidden purposes, these hidden agendas in our sicknesses and problems are still there, they're going to stay stuck. So we have to go deep. And as we do, we go to those deeper layers of pain and guilt and lack and murderousness that are within the mind. When we look at them and see that they cannot be, that's when sickness can be lifted. Okay, so being causeless and without a meaningful intent of any kind cannot be at all. When this is seen, healing is automatic. It dispels this meaningless illusion by the same approach that carries all of them to truth and merely leaves them there to disappear, right? So when you look at when you look at sickness, when you look at the causes of it, our love of it, our vengeance and our guilt and unforgiveness behind all of it, we just watch it with the Holy Spirit, realize this is insane. This isn't who we are. We are light. We are love. We are spirit. As we were created by God, this is insane. And then boom, you realize the dream, it lifts, right? So sickness is not an accident. Like all defenses, like projection, like denial, all these defenses against our pain, our guilt, it is an insane device for self-deception. And like all the rest, its purpose is to hide reality, attack it, change it, render it inept, distort it, twist it, or reduce it to a little pile of unassembled parts. And when they're talking about reality here, when reality is heaven, reality is our true nature, reality is love, oneness, right? And the ego hates that, right? Because what happens is that as we get closer to those layers, Patrick's being destroyed. It's going to be undone. The whole world is going to go up in a ball of flames, right? Or at least that's what it thinks, because it's going to be undone. Like this oneness is going to destroy the ego and individuality. So there's a fear. As we get deeper and deeper into the mind, the fear increases until we realize that it's insane. It was never even true, right? And that's when the love and the peace and the oneness come through. So as we're approaching it, there's a lot of defenses. But when you get right into it, the defenses just dissolve away. The aim of all defenses is to keep the truth from being whole. The parts are seen as if each one were whole within himself, right? That I am a God within this world. I have my own needs. They're separate from other people's needs, and it's not possible, and it creates conflict, right? We can only undo conflict when we experience ourselves as one with everyone else, right? That there are no separate interests. That we're spirit. We're not these humans that need money and need to exchange for housing and need to exchange for all these other things, right? That create exchanges and grievances and all that other stuff, right? Defenses are not unintentional, nor are they made without awareness. They're conscious choices. They are secret magic wands you wave when truth appears to threaten what you would believe. They seem to be unconscious, but because of the rapidity with which you choose to use them, in that second, even less in which the choice is made, you recognize exactly what you would attempt to do, and then proceed to think that it is done. Okay, I'm just going to comment here and answer a question. But so yeah, these defenses, they are conscious, and so the more you meditate, the more you spend time sitting in the sickness, sitting in the mind, right, allowing the healing, doing the workbook lessons, you start to have more and more conscious awareness of all these steps, of all these choices that we make, right? And that gives us more freedom to choose again. And that's what this whole course is about. It's about looking at the mind, looking at the ego, looking at the darkness and all its ugliness. But that gives us a choice to make another choice and to see it differently. And that's what brings us to peace. So Monique asks, is death the end of separation? Depends what you mean, but no. Death is a creation of the ego, and it is the ultimate separation. So the Course teaches in certain sections of it that one of our things is the attraction to death, right? There's a part of us that loves death. I noticed that within myself, especially when you're in your deepest, darkest pain, you want the hell out of here. You're like, oh, if I could just die and get the hell out of here, right? A lot of us want out of this, but it's actually an attraction to it. It's attraction to separation. So the ego thinks it's afraid of death, but really it isn't. It actually loves it. The whole world is made of death, right? We can't live, no living being can live here without consuming other living things, right? So the ego thinks it's afraid of death, But really, there's also, you go deep to a deeper layer, and it's a love of death, right? That actually has to be overcome. But what the ego is afraid of is love, and that's what this is going into, and that's what this whole lesson is focusing on, is that when we're experiencing sickness, when we're experiencing calamity, when we're experiencing these deep retreats into fear, you can guarantee that you've been getting very close to the light. Because as you're getting closer, the death of the ego, and yeah, I would say ego death, yeah, the death of the ego is coming nearer. And so as that means the undoing of Patrick, of believing that I'm a separate little guilty me who's just, oh, look at me, I'm sick. I'm definitely not the the one who's committed the genocide or whatever, or has created all this awfulness. Um, uh, so so yeah, yeah, sickness, ego, fear is a defense against love. So all of it is defense against all our pain, against all our guilt and all of that. But ultimately, all of those are a defense against love, because once you experience the love, the peace, all of it dissolves, and the undoing of the ego is inevitable. So what happens is when we get close to that, what will happen is ego will come and clamor back, being like, I'm going to bring you back in. Here's some sickness. Here's some death. Oh, your niece is going to die. Your nephew's going to die. And look at all this awfulness, and then bring you right back into the ego. Like, oh yeah, I'm definitely an ego. You're bankrupt and whatever, right? So but when you can learn this, that sickness, and this is the name of this lesson, sickness is a defense against the truth, right? So this is a thought reversal, right? We think sickness is a defense against our guilt. It's a defense against our feelings of shame and wretchedness and blame and all of that, which is kind of true. But ultimately, at the very core of it, if we're experiencing sickness, it's because we're also experiencing love. We're attracted to love. And so that's the reversal of this lesson. Sickness is actually a defense against the truth. And what is the truth? That we're love, that we're peace, that we're oneness. And so that's what this lesson is teaching us, is to cut through all of it. Oh, I'm experiencing sickness. Well, that must mean it's because I'm love. It must be because I'm peace. Otherwise, the ego wouldn't be clamoring forward if I'm not getting close to the love. And so that's a bit of a cut through all these layers of the mind, right? Of delving deeper. And I think we need to do some of that. But this is a way of cutting through, instead of going all the way through all the layers, you can go like, oh, I'm feeling sickness, being that it because I'm really loved, right? So you can, instead of what we normally do, and we still have to do a bit of this, right? Of sinking through the layers of the mind, because truth has power on its own, we have the ability to cut through all the layers and go to the truth immediately without having to sift through all of them. And that's what this lesson is. Sickness. Oh, you're sick? That's because you're actually experiencing the oneness. It's a defense against it. Well, I'm going to give up that defense and allow the love, right? And so that's what this lesson is kind of going into. All right. Okay. Who but yourself evaluates a threat, decides escape is necessary, and sets up a series of defenses to reduce the threat that has been judged as real. All this cannot be done unconsciously. But afterwards, your plan requires that you forget you made it, so it seems you're external to your own intent. So it seems to be external to your own intent, happening beyond your state of mind, an outcome with a real effect on you, and instead of one affected by yourself, right? So we're the dreaming mind up here, but we're convinced that I'm Patrick, poor little me, right? Who got my sickness and all my problems and all of that, right? So it's poor little me, like, and so we feel victimized by it, right? And we feel weak and helpless, and that's our defense against our guilt. But what we don't realize is that we're the ones that set it all up. And part of our plan was just to forget that we're the dreaming mind that's dreaming up the whole thing. So it is this quick forgetting of the part you play in making your quote unquote reality that makes defenses seem to be beyond your own control. But what you have forgot can be remembered, given willingness to reconsider the decision which is doubly shielded by oblivion, right? The belief that we're an ego and we're not the ones making it all up. It's the forgetting that we can pierce our way through. Your not remembering is but the sign that this decision still remains in force as far as your desires are concerned. So our mission is to unearth those decisions and to undo them. That's what the Holy Spirit is with them. So mistake not this for fact. Defenses must make facts unrecognizable. They aim at doing this, and it is this they do. Every defense takes fragments of the whole, assembles them without regard to all their true relationships, and thus constructs illusions of a whole that is not there. It is this process that imposes threat, and not whatever outcome may result. So it is the process of separating, of believing that my neighbor is different from me and they have different interests, and that's why they're angry at me and they want me to leave, or whatever. We have a dispute about something, right? And so it's this feeling of separation. That's the real problem, the belief that that person is separate. And the inevitable result is all the conflicts and the controversies and the problems that result. But the real problem is the fact that we split the mind. We splintered it into these different people, different factions, different countries, right, that are at war with each other. It's the separation itself that is the problem. And that's the choice that needs to be done. It is this process that imposes threat and not whatever outcome may result. When parts are wrested from the whole and seen as separate and wholes within themselves, they become symbols standing for attack. Because if I'm Patrick, then all my concerns are just about Patrick, right? I'm making decisions about what's best for me. That's going to conflict with what my neighbor's going to decide about themselves. And then we got to work out this conflict, or we need to fight each other or whatever, right? In order to decide who's going to win. And sometimes you can't. You got to kill off the other guy, right? Because they're going to push you into the sea, right? So as long as you believe that you're separate and that's who you really are, conflict is inevitable. Peace within the world is not really real, because the Course teaches, right? The most you can find within the world is, and they say, mistake not a pause within the battlefield for peace, right? So when we see these moments, oh, there's no war within the world, you know what I mean? The Middle East is peaceful, or Ukraine is no longer being invaded, right? Is that really the peace that we're looking for? It can't be. There's still pigs that are being slaughtered, right? There's still poor little soybean plants that are being chopped up and harvested, right? If you want to go that route of believing that veganism is less cruel, it's not, right? If you focus in, you watch some documentaries on plants, they scream when they're eaten, right? Some of them actually do. It's kind of insane. But if you want to look that way, you can find the guilt in veganism, right? It's not really possible to find peace within the world. You can have these illusions or whatever, and that's why forgiveness and healing are still illusions. They can bring on a sense of peace that can help you on your step to remembering who you are. But the goal is not healing within the world. That's just a step along the way. It's just a reflection. It's just a guiding post, but it's not the goal. Okay. Where was I? When parts are wrested from the whole and seen as separate and wholes within themselves, they become symbols standing for attack upon the whole, successful in effect, and never to be seen as whole again. And yet you have forgotten that they stand for your own decision, but for your own decision of what should be real, to take the place of what is real. Sickness is a decision. It is not a thing that happens to you quite unsought, which makes you weak and brings you suffering. It is a choice you make, a plan you lay, when for an instant truth arises in your own deluded mind, and all your world appears to totter and prepare to fall. Now are you sick, that the truth may go away and threaten your establishments no more, right? So the love that's going to destroy the ego will go away. How do you think that sickness can succeed in shielding you from the truth? because it proves the body is not separate from you. And so you must be separate from truth, right? Because when we're feeling sick, when we're feeling alone, we're feeling consumed in problems, we feel separate, we feel very rooted in the body. My leg is broken, I can't walk, I'm definitely a body. You suffer pain because the body does, and in this pain you are made one with it. Thus is your true identity preserved, and the strange, haunting thought that you might be something beyond this little pile of dust is silenced and stilled, right? That's what this is. Sickness is to prevent that from happening. We don't want that thought creeping into the room. For see, this dust can make you suffer, twist your limbs and stop your heart, commanding you to die and cease to be, right? We're victims of this body that's so wretched and decrepit and weak and vulnerable. Thus is the body stronger. Thus is the body stronger than the truth, which asks you live, but cannot overcome your choice to die. Look at the body. Look how vulnerable. Look at all the weak, horrible awfulness. The truth must not be true, right? It can't be. Look at how much I suffer. And so the body is more powerful than everlasting life. The ego would have us believe. Sickness would have us believe. Heaven must be more frail than hell, and God's design for the salvation of his son opposed by a decision stronger than his will. His son is dust, the Father incomplete, and chaos sits in triumph on his throne. Such is your planning for your own defense. And you believe that heaven quails before such mad attacks as these, and God made blind by your illusions, truth turned into lies, and all the universe made slave to laws which your defenses would impose on it. Yet who believes illusions but the one who made them up? Who else can see them and react to them as if they were the truth? Again, we're going into the mindset of sickness. When you're in sickness, right? Everything is awful. Everything is like you're frail, you're weak. You're not thinking of love, of oneness, of peace, of being united with everyone else, and your powerful, all-powerful, omnipresent mind that is one with everything that ever was, right? You're not in that state. It's like, no, that can't be true, you know. So that's how we feel when we're sick, especially in a severe illness. That is the purpose of sickness, right? It's a defense against the truth of what we really are. God knows not of your plans to change his will, right? To change your nature, who you really are, as spirit, always loving, holy and innocent, always giving, you know, that's your true nature. And so your idea that you can make up this self, right? This little Patrick guy who has all his problems and sins and whatnot, like God doesn't know that. This is just a fever dream we're living in. So the universe remains unheeding of the laws by which you thought to govern it. And heaven has not bowed to hell, nor life to death. You can but choose to think you die, can't actually die, or suffer sickness, or distort the truth in any way. What is created as opposed to miscreated, which are ego, Patrick, and all of us seem to be, what is actually created by God, our true nature, our consciousness, cannot be changed, right? What is created is apart from all of this. Defenses are plans to defeat what cannot be attacked. What is unalterable cannot change, and what is wholly sinless cannot sin. It's not possible. It makes no sense. God is an unchanging, all-loving, peaceful, powerful God. By definition, he cannot change. So why can he create something that can change? That's our experience. But once you clicks in the mind that, wait, that doesn't make any sense. How God, an all-loving God can't create a world like this, full of destruction and death. It can't create a body that is born to die. That doesn't make any sense. When that clicks within your mind, you'll get a glitch within the matrix and you'll realize, oh, wait, maybe it actually didn't. And then your mind will wrest its consciousness out of Patrick and into the dreaming mind, or the Holy Son of God, the experience of oneness. So that's the power of these thoughts, if you allow them to sink into your mind. Such is the simple truth. It does not make appeal to might nor triumph. It does not command obedience, nor seek to prove how pitiful and futile your attempts to plan defenses that would alter it. Truth merely wants to give you happiness, for such its purpose is. Perhaps it sighs a little when you throw away its gifts, and yet it knows with perfect certainty that what God wills for you, what love, everlasting peace, and innocence wills for you, must be received. It's not possible that it isn't. It is in, so truth does not oppose. When we open our mind to the truth, it just dissolves the darkness, right? It's not about like a religious debate, like God is loving, you can't create this unloving world. I'm like, you know what I mean? You can't, it's not about a debate. So you don't need to fight it. The more you try to fight it, you reinforce ego. So this is a gentle pull of the truth. So as we open our mind to truth, it's a gentle pull. It's always there. Like it's like, remember the prodigal son, right? The father is not there trying to search for his son, trying to get him to come back from the prostitutes. It's like, no, he's like, you are always the son. You never sinned. You're like, you don't need to come and be a slave. Nothing has changed. You have always been my son. You always welcome to the banquet table. This, what's mine is yours. Nothing changed. So it's a gentle, loving pull into the truth and out of the illusions. But the ego is the opposite, right? Look here, look at this death and destruction. It's kind of a violent pull into um, look how weak and vulnerable we are. So perhaps it sighs a little when you throw away its gifts, and yet it knows with perfect certainty that what God wills for you must be received. It is this fact that demonstrates that time is an illusion. For time lets you think what God has given you is not the truth right now as it must be. The thoughts of God, which are the thoughts we think with God, or actually I think when they use capital, they're talking about the Holy Son of God. So our true nature are quite apart from time. Who we are is quite apart from time. We are a thought of God. For time is but another meaningless defense you made against the truth. Time is the belief in change. As long as you believe that you are not unchanging like God is, always perfect, always innocent, and unable to change, as soon as the idea that we can change ourselves, that we can sometimes be happy, sometimes be sad, sometimes be alive, sometimes be dead, it's the belief in change. So as soon as you realize that change is not possible, time disappears. So that's one of the fundamental things that need to be undone. Sin, right, is something that needs to be changed. That's why deep forgiveness is of realizing that nothing happened. Nothing has changed. We are always spirit, unharmable. The thoughts of God are quite apart from time, for time is but another meaningless defense you made against the truth. Yet what he wills is here, and you remain as he created you, always in the here and now. Truth has a power far beyond defense, for no illusions can remain where truth has been allowed to enter, and it comes to any mind that would lay down its arms and cease to play with folly. It is found at any time. Today, if you will choose to practice giving welcome to the truth, this is our aim today. And we'll give a quarter of an hour twice to ask the truth to come to us and set us free. And truth will come, for it has never been apart from us. It merely waits for just this invitation which we give today. We introduce it with a healing prayer to help us rise above defensiveness and let truth be as it has always been. Sickness is a defense against the truth. I will accept the truth of what I am and let my mind be wholly healed today. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is we'll kind of do a little bit of a meditation here together. Not very long, won't be the full 15 minutes or anything. But what I want is to get a little bit of an inner experience of this. All right. And then we'll go a little bit further. I'll read a little bit of the end here. But okay, so I'll get you to close your eyes. Take a couple deep breaths. And as you do, Tune into your body again. Just notice whatever's there. Any tension, any pain. Notice your heart. Notice if it feels open and flowing, or if it feels closed and tight. Notice your pain. For me, that's usually in my solar plexus area. And as you do, I'd like you to pull into your mind that same experience of illness. So whether it's a major problem in your life, it's an experience, a recent experience of illness, or whatever it might be, an experience of illness of a loved one or of a problem, an illness or a calamity within the world, I want you to bring that into your mind. And so I want you to realize when we're talking sickness here, we're talking about that inner experience, right? Which can extend to other problems and not just sickness of the body. So again, go into that experience and just notice what it is. So your external experience of it, and then tune into the body and just notice, how does this make you feel? What emotions are coming up? Where do you feel that within the body? What is your experience of this sickness? Do you feel weak? Do you feel powerless? Do you feel like you're the poor little me in this big bad world? You can't catch a break. And as you're entering into that experience, right, that feeling of separation, just notice, start to notice that sickness moving out from the world and realizing, where is your suffering, right? Where is that suffering? What is the sickness? Is the sickness really my financial situation? Is the sickness really what's going on with this cancer or my kidney disease? Or is it this inner experience, this pain, this separation, this weakness and feeling of aloneness within the world? So notice where your sickness really is and realize that your sickness is of your mind. It's the mind that sees yourself as sick, that is sick. It seems to be. And as you're sitting in it and trying to welcome it, allowing whatever is there, explore it a little bit. Notice that while you're in this sickness, how do you experience others? How do you experience your brother? Do you feel like they could do more to help you, right? Is there some resentment that might come up there? Is there a feeling that you're alone in this, that nobody's really there with you? Is there a sense of loneliness and separation that way? And explore as well within this experience of sickness, how do you experience God? Do you experience him as loving? Can you really experience him as loving if you're experiencing yourself as sick, right? Or is there this cold, heartless God, cold, heartless universe, cold, heartless government, whatever you might feel it is? How does the world feel to you? How does God feel to you? Because that's your experience of the ego God. Is there this cold, heartless monster, or just who doesn't care about you? You're just a cog within the wheel, caught within the winds of the world, trying to make your way through life, and maybe feeling sometimes like you need to pray to him, that he will maybe give you a little bit of relief from your suffering. Realize as you sit with that experience, right? How does that make you feel, right? It's kind of like, kind of not digging this ego God. I'm realizing I kind of have some resentment there, right? There's that ego God is you. That's not really God, but just realize that there's some forgiveness that needs to happen. That feeling of alone, of being victimized. Okay, so from within this experience, start to realize or open your mind that maybe this isn't really real. Maybe this sickness is a defense against something much deeper about yourself. And as you're welcoming this experience, realize that the one that's welcoming, right, the one that is accepting and allowing this experience is actually kind of a loving presence. So just pay attention to your heart and just repeat these after me, right? Sickness is a defense against the truth. Or maybe use this line. Maybe sickness, maybe just maybe, sickness is a defense against the truth. Maybe it's there to cover up a deep love and innocence that rests within my mind. I will accept the truth of what I am and let my mind be wholly healed today. And just allow your mind to explore that idea, sit with it, invite the Holy Spirit, your right mind, into that experience, and allow you to experience maybe that sickness isn't the truth. Maybe these problems, maybe this body, maybe this world that you're experiencing full of calamities and disasters, maybe it's not the truth. Maybe this is a defense against a deep and powerful love that you really are. And so what I invite you to do is just welcome in that sickness and allow it to dissolve into the light. Sickness is a defense against the truth of what I really am. I am and I remain as God created me, a God that is permanent, all loving, all peaceful, ever beneficent, cannot create calamity, cannot create sickness, cannot create vulnerability. That's not who I really am. I am as God created me, unchanging, innocent, holy and pure, and always deserving of love and blessing. Maybe that's the truth of what I really am. That's the truth of God. It has to be. So maybe this sickness is just a defense against the truth of what I am. So just pay attention, see how that feels a little bit for you. And now what I'd offer you, because often we get stuck in this, and this is a big trick to be able to receive, we need to be able to give. And so what I'd offer you is go back to that experience of sickness and the experience of others that may be causing that, may not be helping you enough, or the ego God that is callously allowing you to be swept by the winds of this cold and heartless world. Go to them. Go to the people in your life that you're holding grievances against. Go to the ego God and say, maybe this sickness is a defense against the truth of what you are. Maybe I'm wanting to see myself as sick so I don't see the truth in you. Maybe you are as God created you. You are holy and pure. You are as God created you, spirit, ever loving, unable to harm or be harmed. And just feel yourself giving that love and light to these figures, to the ego God, to the people in your life that you have any resentments towards. And see the truth of what they are. See the light. for me, that's where I'm really, as I'm offering this forgiveness, I'm remembering not just the truth of what I am, but the truth of what the ego God is. I realize that it's an impossibility, and it dissolves, and I can experience that all of this world of the ego God is not even possible. Right? And you can feel the light starting to shine in. So giving is receiving. Sickness is a defense against the truth, not just the truth of what we are, but the truth of what the ego God is, the truth about what our brother is, the brothers who aren't helping us enough, the ones who caused our illness, the government that is destroying our life. It's not the truth. Our sickness, our calamities are a defense against that. When we can see the light in them, we no longer need our sickness. So I will accept the truth of what I am and let my mind be fully healed today. So healing will flash across your open mind as peace and truth arise to take the place of war and vain imaginings. There will be no dark corners sickness can conceal and keep defended from the light of truth. There will be no dim figures from your dreams, nor the obscure, meaningless pursuits with double purposes insanely sought remaining in your mind. It will be healed of all the sickly wishes that tried to authorize the body to obey. Now is the body healed, because the source of sickness has been opened to relief, the mind. And as you recognize you practice well by this, the body should not feel at all. If you have been successful, there will be no sense of feeling ill or feeling well, of pain or pleasure, no response at all in the mind to what the body does. Its usefulness remains and nothing more. We go to a space of neutrality about the body, not having a healthy, sexy body. That's not what we're looking for. It's just of neutrality so that our mind can connect to oneness, right? So the goal of healing is to remove the separation and the suffering. It's not to have an amazing life and to have $1 million in the bank. It's to no longer be worrying about money. That is the healing of your bankruptcy and your poverty or whatever. It's not the actual having of money. Same with the body. It's not of having a perfect body. You can be ugly and decrepit and on your deathbed, but you can be healed in this way immediately because your body will come to a space of neutrality and you will realize that it's not you. Okay, we're near the end here. So perhaps you do not realize that this removes the limits you had placed upon the body by the purposes you gave to it. And these are laid aside. The strength the body has will always be enough to serve all truly useful purposes. The body's health is fully guaranteed because it is not limited by time, by weather or fatigue, by food or drink, or any laws you made to serve it before. You need do nothing now to make it well, for sickness has become impossible. Yet this protection needs to be preserved by careful watching. If you let your mind harbor attack thoughts, yield to judgment, or make plans against uncertainties to come, you have again misplaced yourself and made a bodily identity which will attack the body, for the mind is sick. Give instant remedy should this occur by not allowing your defensiveness to hurt you longer. Do not be confused about what must be healed, but tell yourself, I have forgotten what I really am, for I mistook the body for myself. Sickness is but a defense against the truth, but I am not a body, and my mind cannot attack, so I cannot be sick. All right, so that's the line that you can use if this speaks to you to cut through all the defenses and all the evilness and the awfulness that you see within the world, that it's only our mind that is sick, and that's not even possible. Anyway, this has been very healing for me. This is very, very helpful. And I'll just open it up if anybody has any comments. I know it's kind of negative font there.
That was amazing. Sorry. Thank you, Patrick. That was fantastic. Just wanted to say that.
Thanks, Sheldon. All right, so that will be the end of the video for this week. I'll keep it running in case anybody wants to. Oh, is it just you? Yeah, in case anybody wants to talk after. So I'm just going to end the recording.